From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. We are so happy that you all are here. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the 2016 National Book Festival and the Poetry and Prose Pavilion. This pavilion is sponsored by the National Endowment for the Arts, our nation's arts agency. At the NEA, we are currently celebrating our 50th anniversary, so we are celebrating 50 years of giving Americans the opportunity to participate in the arts, exercise their imaginations, and develop their creative capacities. On behalf of everyone at the Arts Endowment, thank you for joining us. I'm Eleanor Billington. I manage the Poetry Out Loud program at the Arts Endowment. Poetry Out Loud is a national youth arts program that seeks to foster the next generation of literary readers by capitalizing on the latest trends in poetry, recitation, and performance. Poetry Out Loud encourages high school students to learn about classic and contemporary poetry through memorization and public recitation. Started in 2005 as a partnership between the National Endowment for the Arts, the Poetry Foundation in Chicago, and 53 state and jurisdictional arts agencies, Poetry Out Loud has grown to serve more than 3 million students and 45,000 teachers at 10,000 high schools nationwide. We are really proud of its growth. The program helps students master public speaking skills and build self-confidence, but most importantly, it helps them discover their own creative voice. If poetry recitation sounds a little bit dry to you, I promise that in a few minutes you're going to see firsthand the power of a poem spoken aloud. A little bit about the way the program is structured. We use a pyramid structure, so it's a lot like the National Spelling Bee. Poetry Out Loud starts at the classroom level. Winners in the classroom then advance to a school competition, then to a state and regional competition, and ultimately they come to the national finals, which is held in Washington, D.C. each spring. If you're an interested high school student in the audience, talk with your teachers about Poetry Out Loud. And if you're an interested high school teacher in the audience, please consider taking on Poetry Out Loud this year. It is not too late to get involved. We have information on the side of the room about the program, so come talk to me or anyone at that table after our session. We also have a great website dedicated to the program. I know everybody has smartphones now, so if you go to poetryoutloud.org, you can see the website includes more than 900 eligible poems. We have video recitations. We have many of the students on the stage featured on that website. We also have a comprehensive teacher's guide, all free and available to you. We have, again, that information is over here, so visit the table when we're done. Last year we had more than 315,000 students participate in Poetry Out Loud, and today you're going to hear from 3 of the state champions who made it all the way to the national finals. Poetry Out Loud students are eligible for prizes at the state and national level of competition, including a $20,000 prize for the national champion. Every year, Poetry Out Loud awards more than $100,000 in prizes and school stipends for the purchase of poetry materials. While a $20,000 prize is nothing to scoff at, we believe that the real reward comes when students connect their poems to their own life experience. A successful poem can challenge us, teach us, and invite us to view our world anew. In the words of poet Naomi Shihab Nye, I love the deep attribution of poetry to pause, to look, to listen, to pay attention to variety, to learn something new. This morning, we have the opportunity to slow down and really listen to these students, to honor their work with our attention, and to open ourselves to learning from them and the poems they embody. So with that said, we're going to get started. Our first student is Neely Seams. Neely is the 2016 Poetry Out Loud state champion from West Virginia. She was one of the top 9 national finalists at this year's competition in DC. She is a recent graduate of Greenbrier East High School and is attending Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia, where she studies theater. Please join me in welcoming Neely to the podium.
Being in a competition like Poetry Out Loud seems like it would be a lonely experience to those looking in, but it's not. Sure, you're up on stage by yourself, but whenever you're backstage, you're making friends with people who think the same way you do and like the same things and are feeling the exact same thing you are at the exact same time. Especially at the national level, you can broaden your outlook on life. It's a microcosm of the diversity of America, and it's at your fingertips. Relating to the poems and the audience and your peers that you're meeting is a beautiful experience, and it widens your outlook on life. And that's the biggest thing that I've taken away from Poetry Out Loud. I will be doing 2 poems. My first one is called Degrees of Grey in Phillipsburg by Richard Hugo. You might come here Sunday on a whim. Say your life broke down. The last good kiss you had was years ago. You walk these streets laid out by the insane, past hotels that didn't last, bars that did, the tortured try of local drivers to accelerate their lives. Only churches are kept up. The jail turns 70 this year. The only prisoner is always in, not knowing what he's done. The principle supporting business now is rage. Hatred of the various grays the mountain sends. Hatred of the mill, the silver bill repeal, the best like girls who leave each year for Butte. One good restaurant and bars can't wipe the boredom out. The 1907 boom. 8 going silver mines, a dance floor built on springs. All memory resolves itself in gaze, in panoramic green, you know the cattle eat, or 2 stacks high above the town, 2 dead kilns, the huge mill in collapse for 50 years that won't fall finally down. Isn't this your life? That ancient kiss still burning out your eyes? Isn't this defeat so accurate the church bell simply seems a pure announcement? Ring and no one comes? Don't empty houses ring? Are magnesium and scorn sufficient to support a town? Not just Phillipsburg, but towns of towering blondes, good jazz and booze the world will never let you have until the town you came from dies inside? Say no to yourself. The old man, 20 when the jail was built, still laughs, although his lips collapse. Someday soon, he says, I'll go to sleep and not wake up. You tell him no. You're talking to yourself. The car that brought you here still runs, and the money you buy lunch with, no matter where it's mined, is silver. And the girl who serves your food is slender, and her red hair lights the wall. Thank you. And my second poem is called Passing by Toy Darracott. A professor invites me to his black lit class. They're reading Larson's Passing. One of the black students says, sometimes light-skinned blacks think they can fool other blacks, but I can always tell, looking right through me. After I tell them I am black, I ask the class, was I passing when I was just sitting here before I told you? A white woman shakes her head desperately as if I had deliberately deceived her. She keeps examining my face, then turning away as if she hopes I'll disappear. Why presume passing is based on what I leave out and not what she fills in? In one scene in the book, in a restaurant, she's passing. Though no one checked her at the door, hey, you black? My father, who looked white, told me this story. Every year when he'd go to get his driver's license, the man at the window filling out the form would ask, white or black? Pencil poised without looking up. My father wouldn't pass, but he might use silence to trap a devil. When he didn't speak, the man would look up at my father's face. What did he write? My father quizzed me. Thank you.
Thank you, Neely. That was beautiful. That's just like the best way to start a Saturday morning. I mean, whew, good weekend. Next up is 2016 Poetry Out Loud Georgia State Champion, Marta Palumbo. Marta was the first runner-up at Nationals last April. She finished in second place overall. She is a recent graduate of Cambridge High School in Milton, Georgia, and just began her freshman year at the Belmont University studying commercial music performance with an emphasis in songwriting. Welcome, Marta.
I memorized my poem, but I did not memorize my statement, so hello, everyone. It's such an honor to be here representing Georgia one more time, at the Georgia Poetry Out Loud at the National Book Festival, and to get to recite alongside my fellow competitors from earlier this year. So winning second place at the 2016 competition was such a wonderful, indescribable experience. I remember being amazed at how nice and welcoming everyone was, and, we were all so supportive of each other. And I remember telling jokes and dancing around backstage because we were so nervous. So as we were waiting for our names to be called. And most of all, I remember walking out on stage time after time, just hoping that reciting my poems as best as I could would be enough. And apparently it was. So it was amazing. But however magical it was to be on stage, I think one of the most memorable parts was the after party. Not because it meant that the competition was over, but on the contrary, it gave us a new place to begin, It was wonderful. I sang a snippet of a song that I ended up releasing just a month ago on my first EP. I heard original poetry that left me absolutely awestruck, just at the capacity of feeling that I was witnessing in that room. I heard monologues and poetry and singing and more poetry, and at one point there was some beatboxing going on. I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, right? And of course, more poetry. But it wasn't just a celebration of what had come to pass. It was a celebration of everything that we had learned from each other. It was a final moment to let our walls down and share our passion, creativity, and experience, this time not for competition, but for no other reason than that we wanted to share what we had created with people that we knew would appreciate it and we knew would love us for it. So the poems I'm reciting today are the two poems that got me into the final three. For the Young Who Want To, by Marge Piercy, is especially relevant in my life, seeing as an artist myself, I kind of encounter this situation a lot. And Mingus at the Showplace, on the other hand, holds a special place in my heart. It takes a while to understand, analyze, and fully appreciate, but when you do, it's really impossible to forget. So without further ado, I will be performing For the Young Who Want To by Marge Piercy. Talent is what they say you have after the novel is published and favorably reviewed. Beforehand, what you have is a tedious delusion, a hobby, like knitting. Work is what you have done after the play is produced and the audience claps. Before that, friends keep asking when you are planning to go out and get a job. Genius is what they know you had after the third volume of remarkable poems. Earlier, they accuse you of withdrawing, ask why you don't have a baby, call you a bum. The reason people want MFAs, take workshops with fancy names when all you can really learn is a few techniques, typing instructions, and somebody else's mannerisms, is that every artist lacks a license to hang on the wall. Like your optician, your vet, proving you may be a clumsy sadist whose fillings fall into the stew, but you're certified a dentist. The real writer is one who really writes. Talent is an invention, like phlogiston after the fact of fire. Work is its own cure. You have to like it better than being loved. Thank you. This will be Mingus at the Showplace by William Matthews. I was miserable. Of course, for I was 17. And so I swung into action and wrote a poem. And it was miserable, for that was how I thought poetry worked. You digested experience and shat literature. It was 1960 at the Showplace, long since defunct, on West 4th Street, and I sat at the bar, casting beer money from a thin reel of ones. The kid in the city, big ears like a puppy. And I knew Mingus was a genius. I knew 2 other things, but they were wrong, as it happened. So I made him look at the poem. "There's a lot of that going around," he said. And sweet baby Jesus, he was right. He laughed amiably. He didn't look as if he thought bad poems were dangerous, the way some poets do. If they were baseball executives, they'd plot to destroy sandlots everywhere so that the game could be saved from children. Of course, later that night, he fired his pianist in mid-number and flurried him from the stand. "We've suffered a diminuendo in personnel," he explained. And the band played on. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. That was wonderful. Finally, we welcome 2016 Virginia State Champion, who is also our Poetry Out Loud National Champion for this year, Aki Tugan. Aki is this recent graduate of the Governor's School for the Arts in Norfolk, Virginia, and he just began, or is about to begin, his freshman year at the American Musical and Dramatic Academy in New York City, where he will be studying acting. Since becoming the Poetry Out Loud National Champion, Aki participated in the Poets House Brooklyn Bridge Poetry Walk in New York City and met the Governor of Virginia over the summer. He'll also be presenting at the International Storytelling Festival in Jonesboro, Tennessee next month. Welcome, Aki.
Good morning. It's always a pleasure to be on stage representing Poetry Out Loud, whether it's a state champion, national champion, or just starting off as nothing. When I first started Poetry Out Loud, I was just a student trying to get an A in my English class. But reading the poems along the way sparked something inside of me. I began to fall in love with the thought of poetry and how I connected with some of the poems that I ran across. Excitement grew for the next time I would be able to get on stage and display this passion. 3 years of my high school career consisted of me learning the ins and outs of this thing called Poetry Out Loud. Winning it all seemed like a dream. Thinking of it was like watching the quarterback of the winning Super Bowl team hold up the trophy and say, "I'm going to Disneyland." But when I got the chance to hold that trophy, I became speechless. The moment was so bittersweet. Because it wasn't just about the title, it was about getting on the stage and doing what I loved. It was sharing life-changing experiences with a poetic family that I could never forget. These people made it so easy to enjoy the moments off stage in order to be ready for the moments on stage. These poets are a group of champions waiting to change the world. I'm so grateful for the opportunities this competition has laid out for us as artists. I am Aki, but we are Poetry Out Loud. Today I will be reciting 2 poems for you. The first one is called Always Something More Beautiful by Stephen Dunn. And this poem, it really resonates with like the course of how Poetry Out Loud goes, the race of what Poetry Out Loud really is, and you'll really understand as I begin to recite. This time I came to the starting place with my best running shoes and pure speed held back for the finish. Came with only love of the clock and the underfooting and the other runners. Each of us would be testing excellence and endurance in the other runners. Though in the past, I'd often veer off to follow some feral distraction down a side path, allowing myself to pursue something odd or beautiful. Becoming acquainted with some of the ways how not to blame myself for failing to succeed. I had come to believe what's beautiful had more to do with daring to take yourself seriously, to stay the course, whatever the course might be. The guy in the front seemed ready to fade, his long, graceful stride shortening as I came up along his side. I was sure now I'd at least exceed my best time. But the guy with the famous final kick had already begun his move. Beautiful, I heard a spectator say, as if something inevitable, again coming from nowhere, was already on its way. Thank you. This next one is actually one of my favorite poems to do. I started my Poetry Out Loud career with this poem. It's called Football by Lewis Jenkins. I take the snap from the center, fake to the right, fade back. I've got protection. I've got a receiver open downfield. What the hell is this? This isn't a football. It's a shoe. A man's brown leather Oxford, a cousin to a football maybe, the same skin but not the same, a thing made for the earth, not the air. See, I realize that this is a world where anything is possible, and I understand also that one often has to make do with what one has. I have eaten pancakes, for instance, with that clear corn syrup on them, because there was no maple syrup, and they weren't very good. Well, anyway, this is different. My man downfield is waving his arms. One has certain responsibilities. One has to make choices. This isn't right, and I'm not going to throw it. Thank you.
Thank you, Aki. Thank you to all our students again. I think they've earned another round of applause or so, maybe. So we have a little bit of time this morning for questions. So if you'd like to ask a question, there are mics on either side of the room. You can come up to the mic. If you're asking a question, please do come to the mic because we're recording all this and we want to get your question for our audience that is not in the room. So I have a couple actually before we turn to the audience, and we'll just go in order if you guys don't mind coming to the podium to answer. So my first question is for Neely. Neely has been involved in POL several years. You've been a state champion more than one time in West Virginia. And so I just want to hear from you, how did POL start for you? What was your introduction to it? We know from Aki, he was in English class trying to get a good grade, but we want to hear from you sort of what your story is with POL. How did you get involved?
Well, I started out with POL pretty unenthusiastically. I heard about it and I was like, oh, maybe I want to do that. So I went to my English teacher and I expressed some interest. And then the next thing I know, the next day in class, it was an assignment. And so we all picked out poems and I won for the classroom. And then I didn't know when the school competition was until the day before. So the day of, I went crying to my teacher, and I said, I don't want to do this. And she made me. And then I won for the school, and then I went to states, and I didn't make it that far, but after being at states, that's whenever it really ignited an interest, and I realized that there was more on the Poetry Out Loud anthology than Fire and Ice. And it sparked this love of literature, and it sparked in me a love of writing, which has carried on. So yeah, that's how I got started.
Thank you, Neely. We hear from a lot of students that they love this program now, but when their teacher first said, you need to recite a poem in front of the classroom, it's a scary thing. I remember doing it in high school. It's terrifying. You do it and you feel empowered. It's awesome once it happens, but it's hard at the beginning. It takes a lot of courage. So Marta, my next question is for you. You mentioned songwriting and having an EP out. Is there a way that working on Poetry Out Loud and learning poems by heart has influenced your creative voice as you're writing your own work and that sort of thing? How do the two relate to one another, if they do?
Well, they actually relate a lot, just because for me, I recite poetry the way I would sing a song, like just mentally at least. And it's funny because my literature teacher never understands how I mark my poems, because I write them, you know, I print them out and then I mark through them like I would mark a piece of music. So I have like, okay, fortissimo here and then crescendo to this, and you know, so I mark everything like a piece of music. So honestly, I think my chorus teacher would be more able to tell what I'm trying to do with the poem than my literature teacher would. But so they really do relate, because you know, whether the poems rhyme or not, like a song, I think it all comes from the same creative space. It's, you know, it's telling a story, it's expressing something within yourself, which is really all that music is as well. And just because there's no actual music to the poem doesn't mean that you can't sing it in a way. So that's how it relates to me.
My last question is specifically for Aki. You're going to start school soon. You're at New York. You're going to be in New York City. And you're going to be studying acting, correct? How does poetry relate to that? Are you still going to continue to read poetry? Do you know yet? It's hard to know before you've started, but I'd like to hear a little bit about what you're expecting to do this fall. So, yeah.
Well, I had been acting way before I was introduced to the poetry world. I had been acting since I was like 7. So coming into poetry was like, at first it was like reading a bunch of like boring poems. It's like, oh God, everything's rhyming, the cat and the hat and this and that. But then it's like finding those poems that you relate to is just like finding a monologue that you relate to, or just like playing a role that you relate to. It's kind of embracing that story, which is what you do when you're acting, and just releasing it and telling it to the audience, which again is basically what you do as an actor. That's all we do, is tell stories. So it relates dynamically, like it relates drastically as an actor and poetry, and it actually makes it much more easier to understand the literature and know how to like work my way through it. So this fall I do plan on continuing with the poetry world. I do plan on doing some more things up there with organizations and things like that. I'm also a spoken word artist myself, so poetry is still a big part of my life, as well as continuing with acting.
So I have one question for all the students, and then we'll open it up to see if anybody here has questions in the audience. We've talked a lot about picking poems and how important it is to have a poem that speaks to you, because otherwise there's not something there that resonates, and it's harder to connect and especially to know something by heart and care about it. So how did you guys choose your poems? What was the process like for you? I know some kids go through every single poem in the anthology. We've spoken to some students who have read 900 poems, or at least looked at them, which is amazing. Not these guys, maybe. But yeah, if you guys don't mind, Neely, we'll start with you, and we'll just maybe come up in a little rolling roll. You go first.
Well, you go on there, and there's so many poems that it seems overwhelming, and for the most part, whenever I began, I just started picking random letters because it's alphabetized, and so I'd pick a random letter and I would look through the poems on that letter. Then, as I got more involved, I would find works that I found on my own that I enjoyed and related to, and if it wasn't on the anthology, I would go and find related works that relate back to that poem. How I picked my poems this year specifically, with Degrees of Gray, I come from West Virginia, which is a coal mining state. And even though it takes place outside of West Virginia, I know those towns that I talk about in Degrees of Gray. And there's something so personal about it. And with Passing, it was also very personal, where since I am biracial and I can pass, and that's something that has always bothered me, but I've never been able to put it into words. So after reading Passing, it was someone understands me, and now I can vocalize this. And that's how I picked mine this year.
Well, mine were mostly by accident the first year. There's an option on the website that says, find random poem. And so basically, because I didn't want to have to go through the whole anthology or like go by letter and then be like, oh, I didn't check that letter. That's such a great poem. Why didn't I do that? I would just click random and read it. If it didn't inspire me by like the first couple lines, I'd be like, nah, next, next, next. And so the first year, that's really how I found those poems. Is just I kind of waited to see something that would inspire me. And it's not that I stopped doing that as I went on, because I've done it all 4 years, but by the time I got to the year that took me to nationals, Mingus at the Showplace had been done by a girl at my school who didn't advance, but I just loved the poem. It was so interesting. I didn't understand it when she said it, and so that really bothered me because I wanted to be able to understand it. So I went and I looked it up, and I read it, and I read it, and I read it, and so that's how I decided I'm going to do this. For The Young Who Want To was completely by accident. I just threw the anthology, and I read it, and I was like, this is awesome. I need to do this, you know? I understood it so well. And my first poem that I didn't recite was Echo, and so that was, I had come across it a previous year, and then I'd heard someone recite it, and I love Christina Rossetti as a poet. So I really wanted to do something by her and to be able to kind of get into that mindset. So that's how I chose them, mostly by accident and some on purpose. So.
That's exactly how I feel about picking poems. Like, it is such a long process. It's like I have to dedicate myself, like, to a whole night of just picking out poems. It's literally like a 5-hour process for me, because it's literally reading through poems in the anthology, and it's like, oh, no, this one is about a dog in a house. I don't have a dog, so I don't want to talk about that one. But mostly I do it very methodically, though. I always want to find like a fun poem to do, because I feel like you should have fun with poetry, and I feel like that's what a lot of people forget. They feel like, again, like I said at first, they feel like it's just a bunch of boring poems, but a lot of those poems on there are actually really fun. And then again, at the same time, I love to find poems that I really connect with. So it'll be those poems where I'm like, oh my God, this is me. This is me. I should have wrote this. So those are the ones where I'll probably be like, okay, I want to do this one, because it's easier to do and recite poems that you actually relate to, but it is a long process to pick a poem out. But yeah, that's my process though.
We have a little bit of time left. Does anyone in the audience have questions? If you do, just come up to the mics on either side. Do you have a question in the back? Yeah? Can you come to the mic? Do you mind? I know it's a hassle. It's just because we're recording. Yeah, you right there. I'm sorry. Thank you, guys. We appreciate that.
Is this on?
Go ahead.
So why do you only choose from the anthology? Because Neely, right? You said that you found some that you liked, but you couldn't use it, and then you had to like go to the anthology and see how it worked. Like, why do you only choose from the anthology?
I can answer that as well as Neely had to choose from the anthology. The way the program works is we have an anthology online of about 900 plus poems, and those are the poems that the students can recite from. So those are the poems that we've negotiated rights for. They're the ones that are included in our anthology, and so every summer we update that. So we're always looking for suggestions from anyone. Students can suggest poems, teachers, the general public. So during the summer we go through the whole anthology and we decide which poems we're going to add and how to negotiate rights for that and that kind of thing. So that's the way that it works. So if you guys have ideas and you want to email the NEA, me in particular, we accept ideas all year long, and then we look at the poem over the summer. We look at the anthology over the summer to add new poems. So yes, Neely, Aki, Marta, they had to choose from that anthology. Oftentimes a student will say, I love this poem, why is it not in there? And they'll tell us and we'll say, great, and we try to add it that summer. So that's how it works. Okay. Yeah, of course. Anyone else? Oh, right here.
Hi, how do you practice your poems? Do you have a coach? Do you look in the mirror?
Yeah. Do you recite to your family, your pets? Why don't we start with Neely and yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, you just read it a lot. And if you have a poem that you connect with, it's easier. It sounds magical and weird to explain, but there's something behind clicking with it. You understand it. Then you go through and you mark out what it means. You do research, you find out all of the ins and outs of the poem, and then you just recite it over and over again. I work with my theater teacher, and I do it for my parents all the time. I think they can recite all of my poems as well, including my dog. So he gets really rambunctious, and sometimes it helps because it helps me deal with distractions that might happen in the audience. So as he's like freaking out, it makes me focus more. So it's just repetition and understanding is how I do it.
It's repetition, like she said. It really is repetition. I mean, you sit there, you print it out, and you kind of read it the first couple times, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna recite the first stanza. Crap, what was the word? You know, you just kind of like, you gotta like get into it, and just so you kind of just go stanza by stanza is what I do, and then once I feel like I have it memorized enough, maybe not to recite it right off the bat, but to remember it slowly, piece by piece. You know, even if I have to pause and be like, okay. And the next line rhymes with this word, so it's this. I write it down because it really helps me. I heard a rumor one time that before you play shows, if you write down your lyrics, you remember them better. And so that's what I've been doing for my shows, and I decided why not do it with poetry as well. And it actually really works because there's something about your handwriting and seeing the words come out slowly as you're, not that you're speaking them, but you're just writing them out yourself. There's something that really helps me remember in that, so that's how I do that. Yeah.
Again, I lock myself in my room. It's a lot of that during the competition time. It's like a season for me. I lock myself in my room for about, again, 5 hours, and it's just, 5 hours. And it's just going over the poem. I take it line by line. It's kind of also like doing a research paper. I look up the words that I don't know, make sure I know what they are, and then it's like, if I can say it really fast, I know the poem, and then I slow it down, and then I say it like really elaborate. So it's like going through it and just, again, repetition. And I definitely agree with Neely. The poems that you actually connect to are much easier to just like recite because it's basically like telling one of your own stories. But it's 5 hours of locking myself in my room.
Thanks. All right, we'll go to this side. Go ahead with your question.
Why is your favorite poem football?
Aki? That is a good question.
My favorite poem is football. Specifically, that was actually one of the poems that I didn't pick out my 9th grade year when I started Poetry Out Loud. My librarians were like, oh, you're a guy, so let's throw you a sports poem. But really, it has nothing to do with football. It was just that was one of the poems that I actually got to have fun with, which started for me to realize that there was fun in poetry. So the audience really loved it every time I did it. So it was just one of those poems that, like, it took me a long way, and it was just enjoyable to do.
Hi, my name is Kennedy, and my question is, what was your inspiration for all of your poems?
That's a great question. So what was inspiration for reciting and how you chose them? Neely, do you want to start? You always have to start. Does anybody else want to start? Marty, go for it.
So for the easiest one to say is for the young who want to, because obviously, as when I tell people like, oh, I study music, they're like, what are you majoring in? I'm like, music, like it's a study. So, I've gotten that question a few times, and so it's funny because I read this poem, and it was like, for the young who want to be artists, you have to work at your art, and there are going to be people that are like, are you gonna get a job? Like, okay. So my inspiration for that was really kind of just, I really understood what they were talking about, and I was like, I want to do this because it really is good advice. Talent is an invention. You have to work at it, and so I thought it was really great advice for myself, and I wanted to share it because I knew that I'd be in a room full of, writers, artists, poets, everything. So I just felt like it really needed to be said. Mingus at the Showplace, there's just this element of like childish wonder to it that I really loved because there's also so much uncertainty. This kid like worships Mingus, and Mingus is just kind of this larger than life person, and then at the end he's dismissing his staff and just a normal human being, and you kind of get to see a little aspect of that, and I really loved that about this kid who thinks he's got it all figured out. He's like, oh, I'm 17 and I'm so miserable, and And, you know, I suck at writing poetry, just stuff like that. So there's really so many little aspects to it, and I loved that the poem itself never really completed any of those aspects. It just left you to figure them out as the kid himself is figuring them out. So I really loved that about it, and I again felt like it needed to be said. So really, the inspiration for reciting is more just when you feel that something needs to be shared with other people, and when you love it because you feel like you need to say it. And I think that's really what most of the inspiration for reciting comes from. So.
Well, like I said, where I came from helped with Degrees of Gray, and who I am helped inspire me for passing. But what keeps me reciting and what keeps me interested is there's personal growth that happens every time you read a poem, and then a little bit more happens whenever you memorize it, and then whenever you get to share it with other people. You learn about literature and you learn about yourself. Sometimes I read a poem and I just have to ask myself, why do I like this? And so I learn more about myself with other people's work, and it gives me new ways to relate to myself and to other people, and you find out about so many different aspects of the world and views every time you read a new poem. So that's why I keep reciting and keep reading poetry.
My inspiration goes back to, of course, the poems that we connect to. It's one of those things, and I believe Neely said it earlier. She said it's like the things that you want to say, but you don't know how to put it into words, and it's all right there in a poem. So it's like one of those things where it's like you can't wait to really express that part of yourself. You want to get that story out of you. One of my favorite poems that I did during the competition was I'm a Fool to Love You by Cornelius Eady, and it actually, that's one of the poems that set my mom in tears, because it has a lot to do with what my mother went through as far as like falling in love. No, that's not the right one. And then this other guy isn't so good as well. And it's like basically that. And it's just like those moments where I can get on stage and tell stories of what actually happened to me is what keeps me going and keeps me inspired by it.
Thank you all. Hard to follow these students. We have time for one more question. Would you like to go ahead, sir?
Yeah, my question is there any tips for parents in terms of trying to motivate their sons or daughters, especially my 14-year-old daughter who's more engaged with her iPhone than reading the written poetry?
That is a great question. I cannot speak to that. I have a 6-month-old baby, and so she does exactly what I tell her to right now. But I'm wondering, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot here, but do you mind? So this is Aki's mother, and she might have some, yeah.
I will just say that I am so, and anytime I have the opportunity to publicly say it, I want to do that. I am so very, very proud of my son and what he has accomplished. I love him so very much, and I'm proud of you too as well, ladies. We've had a tremendous time during our experience in Poetry Out Loud. Aki has been on the stage since he was about 7, and my biggest thing in terms of him being able to do what it is that he really loved was to find the outlet and to nurture it. I have a son that plays football, and I thought he was going to say that's why he picked football. But I have a son that plays football, and he was very good as an athlete. And I remember Aki being on the football field, and his stepdad and I sitting on the sidelines like, no, you're supposed to tackle the guy with the ball. And he was like, hey. It's those moments when you realize that as a parent, it is your responsibility to push kids and to nurture the gift that's in them. And they don't have to be like other kids. And Aki said to me one time, I wanted to hide the fact that I was a poet because no one else was doing it, and it didn't seem like the right thing to do. He felt like he had to be an athlete. And so then I knew that it was my job to pull that out of him. And so he participated in programs that nurtured the gift and pushed him. And I have always and will continue to be his #1 fan. So if I've had to give any advice, nurture the gift and always be on the sidelines as their #1 fan.
That is a great way to close this session. We are so proud of these students. We are so thankful and proud for their supporters, their family members, teachers. They all have a chaperone here with them today. So it's not just these students who are doing this. They have this, a great community of support around them. We hope that you all will stop by our table, which is right over here to the left. If you're interested in Poetry Out Loud, we have free teacher's guides, we have brochures, information about the program. You can sign up for our mailing list to hear more about Poetry Out Loud. Thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you again to our students. They were just fantastic, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the festival.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.